Hello, this is Mr. Rasmussen with Algebra 2 Lesson 110. In this lesson, we look at some inequalities. As you can see, the greater than sign there, and how to graph inequality involving a quadratic on our number line there. So as we get in this, let's look at example 1 there. This greater than is actually telling us that both these numbers have to be positive in the end, because if we had a negative, it would negative times a negative would be a positive, so that would still work. But if one of them was a negative, then it would be less than 0, and it's got to be greater than 0. This here in this setup actually works as a disjunction, where it's an or situation, and we'll see that in a moment here. Okay, to do this, we're going to separate these out. We're going to get x plus 2 is anything greater than 0, and x minus 3 is anything greater than 0. Okay, so we can separate those, and then we want to get x by itself. So if we add 2 to both sides there, we get x is anything greater than negative 2, and then x is anything greater than 3. All right, so if we look at those, these together have to work as a conjunction. And I know I just mentioned that it had to be a disjunction, but we'll see in a moment. These two, anything that is larger than negative 2 is also going to be larger than 3. But everything that's larger than 3 is not all going to be larger than 2. So we're actually going to throw this one out and use this equation here. Okay? Then we're going to do the negation of these. Now, this negation would be where we flip the sign. So if we flip the sign, x plus 2, and we do less than 0, and x minus 3 is less than 0, and solve those, we get x is anything less than 2, or negative 2, because we subtract 2 from the sides, and x is anything less than 3. So basically, it's the same thing as these two answers, but we flip both of the signs, or flip both the inequalities. Okay, so once we get here, let's look at this. If x is anything less than 2 and x is anything less than 3, well, which one's more exclusive? It's this one. Anything less than 3 is also going to be less than 2, negative 2. Therefore, this one's lower, but anything that's less than negative 2 isn't necessarily going to be less than 3. So we have to throw this one out and answer this one. Okay, so between those two, it's got to work together as a conjunction. Then, when we get both of these work as a disjunction when we graph it. So we're going to be graphing x is anything greater than 3. So let's put 3 on my graph there. Open circle. It is all reals, so it's anything greater here. And then the second part, x is anything less than negative 2. So let's put a negative 2 on there. Open circle because it's not equal to, and a line going that way. All right, and that is my graphed equation there. Okay, let's look at example 2. This is a little different, not necessarily tricky, but just a little different. All right, in this one here, first of all, I want to move the 3 over to get it be equal 0. So let's rewrite this as x squared minus 2x, subtract 3 from both sides, and then it is greater or equal to 0. Then I'm going to factor this. And to factor this, you put an x there and an x there, if you remember how to do that. And then a negative and a positive. And let's see, it looks like it's going to be a negative 3 and a positive 1. All right, so there we go. And those are greater than or equal to 0. So when I do this here, looks like I'm going to get a value of x is anything greater or equal to 3, and then x is anything greater or equal to negative 1. All right, and then same thing as before. Let's write the two negations of those. So x is anything less than or equal to 3, and x is anything less than or equal to negative 1. All right, let's look between these. It has to qualify for both. So if x is anything larger than 3, x being larger than negative 1, it can't be both negative 1 and something negative, right? The negative 1 is more exclusive. It can't, a number that's inside here, let's say what's greater than negative 1? Let's say 0, but 0 is not greater than 3, so let's throw this one out here. And then over here, x is anything less than 3 or x is anything less than negative 1. Well, if it's less than 3, it can have stuff that's not less than negative 1, so we got to throw that one out. Okay, so then we use these two that are left as our disjunction where they can work as an either or and both qualify. So let's do the first one here. X is anything equal to or larger than 3. So if I put 3 on there, I'm going to have a closed circle. It says integers as my domain, so I'll put a 4 in there, another closed circle and an arrow. Then x is anything less than negative 1, so put a negative 1 in there, closed circle, negative 2, closed circle, negative 3, closed circle, and an arrow going that way. Okay, and that is how we would graph the second example there. All right, go ahead and try both the practice problems and then check your work with my work. And I will start practice problem A right now. So once again here, I'm going to separate them out. X plus 1 is greater than 0. X minus 2 is greater than 0. I solve this, I get x is greater than negative 1 and x is greater than a plus 2. All right, and then let's write the negation of those. X is less than negative 1. X is less than 2. All right, which one of these works has numbers that work for both of them? Well, if x is anything larger than negative 1, that's going to include some numbers that this one over here doesn't include. So I'm going to throw that one out, and then pretty much I know if I threw that one out, this one over here is going to get thrown out because of negation. X is anything less than negative 1. It could be less than 2 and not less than negative 1, so we're going to throw that one out. All right, let's put that on our graph here. X is anything larger than 2, so put a 2 on there. My domain is all reals. Doesn't have the equal sign, so open circle and a line going that way. All right, and then over here with this one, put a negative 1 in there and open circle because there's no equal sign, and then x is anything less, so a solid line with an arrow because it's reals. All right, and there is my answer for example or practice A. All right, let's look at practice B. Practice B has to be rearranged a little bit here. X squared minus 3x minus 4 is anything greater than or equal to 0. So this means that that it will, once I get my final two parentheses, it works as a disjunction. Let's, all right, factor this, x and an x, and then looks like it's going to be a negative 4 and a plus 1. All right, so that's going to give me x is anything greater than or equal to negative 1, and x is anything greater than or equal to 4. All right, let's write the negation of those. X negative or equal to 1, x negative less than or equal to 4. All right, this one, which one involves both of them? Well, x is larger, x can be larger than negative 1, but not larger than 4, so I gotta throw that one out. And then same thing, if I'm keeping that one, I'll throw that one out. All right, so let's graph this here. Domain is integers. Put 4 there, it's just integers. It does have the equal sign, so let's put a closed circle. X is anything larger. Let's do a 5 and a closed circle and an arrow going that way. And then this one, x is less than negative 1. So it does include it, so a closed circle there, and then a negative 2, closed circle, and an arrow going that way. Okay, I hope that somewhat makes sense there. Work through just getting which ones that you're supposed to graph, and then you put them on there. If you need some help with this, go ahead and reach out to me. Have a great day.